Hope you're all doing well. Well, this is our 126th meeting of the Roundtable, but we're changing it around. We're talking more about current events and whatever anybody wants to talk about. It doesn't really matter what we talk about. Listen to that. You can hear me. I'm even monitoring it on the other side. But just remember, everything you hear today is an opinion. We talk about current events, how it affects us. And today, at one point in time, I really would like to get into it, and I actually would like to do a separate podcast about this, of how COVID has changed our lives. Because I know it's changed mine, and so many things are happening, so maybe it's changed yours as well. And if you have any comments and you want to be part of my podcast of thinking out loud and talking about how COVID affected you, let me know, and we'll set up something so that we can do like one-on-ones, be a 5-minute thing on a podcast, and that'll be the end of the story. And so welcome everybody. I hope everybody had a good weekend and a good week. So hey, we're open for discussion. Anybody have anything you want to say before I get into the stories that I'd like to cover?
Hey, Jan, what would you like to cover?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Well, the first thing I guess that I'd like to cover is the fact that the weather's changing. The weather, I just read an article. Now, of course, it's hard for me to grasp that the weather is getting cold in the East Coast, but they're saying that it's going to, like, it's really getting cold where you guys are, that the Americas are like 100 million Americans are under freeze warnings. But I guess none of us would be affected because we're more on the West Coast, right? Is that right? You guys are on the West Coast. Are you seeing any change in the weather?
It's crazy for Seattle.
Yeah, you guys are having warm weather right now.
Yeah, I just harvested another like 12, 14 tomatoes and chili peppers and green peppers, and I still got strawberries growing out there.
Well, it's 90 degrees in LA.
Wow, that's impressive. I don't know what the weather here is a little chilly. It got down to about 78 degrees, but it's been raining all the time. And if you're following the weather, we was discussing this before the show about the rain here in Phuket and how the roads are getting washed out, and it's this global change of weather. And they just found out, believe it or not, this is hard to believe. And I don't have all the details of the story. Maybe you guys know a little bit more, but it seems like the petro oil companies have been lying to us about how their product has affected global warming and climate change. Has anybody seen that article?
No, but what a shock that they're lying to us.
Unbelievable. It's like this. The big corporations, of course, the global corporations, I believe, are running the world right now. And even the plastic industry, they were the ones who created the whole concept of recycling because they felt it would be a good story. But in reality, they never felt that it was going to work. As a matter of fact, something like only 9% of all the plastics made can be recycled. So, I mean, it's the same thing with the oil companies. They want to make profit, or the cigarette companies, or any of those major companies that make a lot of money off of our vices. And I don't know if our driving is a vice, but what the hell? That's, but it is now coming out that will be a reality, that people have been lied to about climate change and how we're affecting it. But I always said, if you don't believe that we have anything to do with changing of the climate, just start your car in your garage and see how long you could, live. I mean, that's all there is to it. It's there's your proof right there. Anyway, on a brighter note,
here now with all the wildfire smoke, it looks like it's foggy outside, but it's not foggy outside.
Where is the wildfires coming from?
This smoke is coming from just over the mountains into eastern Washington. So we get
there's fires up in Washington.
The offshore flow, when it happens, pulls all the smoke right over here.
Yeah, and there's fires in California. David, has this year been a fire hazard for you, or Kelly? Has it been a fire hazard for you?
No, we don't even know what's going on. Everything's upstate somewhere.
Yeah,
but you have to.
We haven't really had anything in LA. Knock on wood.
David, you have to clear the brush from your house every year, right?
Every year. If we don't do it, the government does it, or they just take our house because we don't pay them. I mean, you have to do it. Springtime areas. And it costs my house, it costs about $1,300 a year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when I
well,
had
David-
a house in the hills, I had to do the same thing.
Yeah, that's right. For those people that don't know, David lives in the Hollywood Hills, and he's got a lot of brush underneath his house. And if he doesn't clear it out, if some idiot drives down the street and throws out a lit cigarette it's possible that he could burn out the whole neighborhood. So yeah, you have to keep your brush cleaned for sure when you live up in the Hollywood Hills. Hey, I guess good news is that NAB is going on. NAB is happening right now at the Javits Center in New York. Obviously, none of us are there. And I don't know what the attendance would be, but I just got a letter from one of my vendors saying that they will not be officially attending NAB, but they're gonna borrow somebody's booth. So if you want to meet them, you could meet them at booth 137. So I don't know what it's like. We'll try to find out. I'm sure there'll be some reviews on how the show went. I hope it goes well. And also, Mike Brown, his show is going on right now in Texas, and he might call in from the show. I wish I could remember the name of his show. It had a crazy name. You guys remember the name of his show?
Cavlo.
That's it. It just feels like, for some reason, when I think of Cavlo, I think of a horse. I don't know why, but it's just one of those things.
Unusual, yeah.
Did we ever figure out what that actually means?
He's told us about it. It's an anagram for something having to do with audio video, but I can't remember exactly what it was. So speaking of things that's going on in New York, and this is just a follow-up to the officials in New York now have changed the garbage on Wednesdays. You can no longer put your garbage out at 4 p.m. You've got to put it out at 8 p.m. They took away 4 hours. And here is the reason. As officials try to combat mounting complaints of rat sightings on the sidewalk, some parts of the city have become all-night, all-you-can-eat rat buffets. So the sanitation said, hey, well, we're going to start picking up all night, but you can't put out your garbage until 8 p.m. So welcome to New York. If you're living there, congratulations.
So then it's dusk and you just can't see the rats.
Well, you could hear them. You could hear them move, and but there's so much light in New York, you could see them. Yeah, they've got a lot of light pollution there, for sure. Gas prices have gone down a little bit. If you've seen gas prices go down, and I guess the White House just released an additional 15 million barrels of oil. So that should reduce the prices as well, which is a good thing. I guess it's in time for the election, which is only a couple of weeks away. It's hard to watch TV this time of year, really hard. I mean, so many commercials about, politicians and stuff like that. And so few of them are fun to watch. I've already voted. I hope you guys vote as well. I can't encourage it more. I was talking to somebody today who believes in the same things that I believe in. And what I'm finding right now is that it's hard to talk to somebody who doesn't believe in the same things that you believe in. If you're a supporter of one particular politician that people on the other side hate, you have nothing in common anymore. And so nobody's talking with one another. Everybody is just drawing lines in the sand. Don't cross my line. I hate you for everything you stand for, and I can't relate to you whatsoever. And I found myself in that position as well during the last presidential election, but I don't feel that way now. Now I feel like, now I just feel like anybody who is voting for the person on the other side of what I believe in is just an idiot and a racist. That's it. So I have nothing in common with them anyway. That's it. Although I will talk to them, So we talked about gas prices. Well, so has anybody had anything to do with New York City would know that Ron Delsner is a famous name in New York City.
Right.
And after 6 decades, he is finally stepping down. I believe he was the president, the East Coast president of Live Nation. I believe that was what it is. or the chairman. That's it. He was chairman of. I love a big company like that can have president of each state, president of California for this organization, and they break it down like that rather than vice president. This guy's president. Did anybody have anything to do with Ron Delsner? Anybody in the room?
Yeah,
Anybody know?
he was a promoter for shows when I was living in New York. So I got to meet him.
Seeing you when you started going to concerts. Now your first concert was Murray the K, right? Is that correct?
Right. That was Sid Bernstein.
Sid Bernstein. So when you started going to concerts, Ron Delsner was already starting to do concerts.
He was a kid when I started doing that, because my first concert was 1961. I couldn't drive yet. I had to take a bus to get into New York City to go to Brooklyn to see a show.
1961.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was like in the 8th grade. And the big DJ in New York, the equivalent of Wolfman Jack, was called Murray the K. And Alan Freed, who started rock and roll, coined the term rock and roll. That's why it's in Cleveland, because he was a Cleveland DJ, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He got caught in a payola scandal, and he was running these holiday shows that had like 20 acts that were all singers. They all come out and sing their song and go back off stage again. There were no bands. So it was the days of the doo-wop and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, when he got caught in this payola scandal and had to retire, Murray the K took over and started running these shows, and he was the big guy in New York anyway, so he just became bigger. And these shows were wonderful. They were like a 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 seat movie theater, the Fox or the Lowe's. And it was Easter and Thanksgiving and Christmas. And you'd have there would be 6 shows a day with a movie in between, and you didn't have to leave. So you go see the first show, you see the movie like Rory Calhoun in a Western or some weird B movie or C movie. And then you go to the second show and then you go home. So it was like pretty amazing. And I saw all the biggest acts of the day were there. It was my first show. It was great. But that was Sid Bernstein. Sid Bernstein was the guy who put the Beatles in Shea Stadium. And Sid Bernstein was also the manager of the first band I ever worked with, which is when I met Ron Delsner, because they were playing in Central Park. And with the Chambers Brothers, Mandrel, they were headlining. And the crowd was so big. The band was unbelievably popular in New York. The crowd was so big that they were on trees. There were more people outside than there were inside. And they were afraid it was going to get rowdy. And Ron Delsner came up to me and said, "Can you ask the band to come on stage and calm the crowd down?" So that, and that's how I ended up meeting Ron Delsner. And he thanked me, for taking care of it, because he was really nervous. The crowd was so big to see Mandrel. Anyway, that's my Ron Delsner story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. I remember my first concert too. It was the Jefferson Airplane. That was the very first concert I went to at Fillmore East. I had to take a subway there, because I was too young to drive at that point in time. Of course, I lived out in the boonies. I lived out in a town called Far Rockaway, which is like, if you've ever been to New York, it's the last exit on the train. You have to take the double E line all the way to the end.
I guess.
And in those days, what was that?
It's far. Far Rockaway is far, right?
Oh yeah, Far Rockaway is far. It became famous during the Hurricane Sandy. That's when it became famous. But other than that, so here's an interesting story. I'm walking down the streets of Krabi, Phuket. We went on a weekend holiday to celebrate our 1-year anniversary. Bo and I, this week we celebrated our 1-year anniversary of being together. Pretty amazing that I could say that after 1 year, I'm still in love with her as much as I was when I realized I fell in love with her, which is really cool. For me, if you know me, that's been a very difficult thing. And so Krabi is like, as you might imagine, not too many people know about Krabi. It's a really tiny city on the coast of the mainland of Thailand, in the south on the Asiatic Sea. Anyway, so we're walking down the street, Bo and I are talking, and this guy's walking next to us, and he turns to me and he says, "Hey, you're from the United States. You sound like you're from New York." And he's got a thick Australian accent. So he says, where you from? I said, well, I'm from Las Vegas, but I grew up in New York. He says, yeah, I knew it. You sound like a New Yorker to me. And we're walking. And then he says, where did you grow up? And I said, well, I grew up in Queens. He says, yeah, that's funny. He says, I lived in Far Rockaway for a couple of years. That's where I grew up. And it's such a small town, but to think that somebody from Australia in Krabi, while walking down the street, would happen to tell me that that's where he lived. And then he went to the right and we went straight. Anyway, but that's my New York. And the concert that really made a difference to me, though, in my life was Watkins Glen. It was if I remember correctly, and I do, it was the Allman Brothers, the band, and the Grateful Dead. And I was up in New York. I just come back from California, where I was going to school at UCSB in Santa Barbara. And I had just gotten out of the military and I was trained as a medic. Anyway, not getting into the whole detail of everything, I ended up being backstage after saving somebody's life. And I'd never been backstage at a concert, and especially something like this. And Bill Graham came up to me and he said, man, you saved somebody's life. That's pretty amazing. He says, I want you to, you could stay behind backstage and watch the show from here. And once I got that taste in my mouth of what it was like backstage at a rock and roll concert, that's when I knew I wanted to be involved in the industry. So what about you, Kelvin? What was your first?
Nothing quite like that. But actually, my first, kind of embarrassed to say it, my first concert was Bread. My mom took me like in 1970, 71, something like that. I was like 10 or 11 years old. She wanted to go see the concert, and so she took me at the Seattle Center Coliseum way back when. But then it's, after that, probably in the 74, 75, I started going to see, all the bands that came through: Zeppelin, Chicago, Average White Band, Tower of Power. I mean, just a total variety from there. But it's interesting. We had in the 70s, in the late 70s, David was talking about seeing a movie, but there was this place in Edmonds, a movie theater in Edmonds that actually, I was playing in bands at that point in time. And so we would go down and we would play along with the other local bands, before a movie in the afternoon, on a Sunday afternoon at the Edmonds Theater. And that was kind of cool to do that.
Yeah. Kurt, what about you?
Summer Sunday 77. My mom took me in Seattle Memorial Coliseum. It was the Beach Boys, the Kinks, Randy Hansen, who's like a right-handed.
Oh, I know Randy Hansen.
Hendrix guitar, but no,
yeah.
he's been the Hendrix impersonator guy before they called it tribute acts. And,
he was the big guy in the Pacific Northwest for years and years.
Yeah, and then Junior Cadillac, actually. Randy Hansen opened, Junior Cadillac, then the Kinks.
Nothing lacking when you're Cadillacing.
That's right. I've seen the Kinks 5 times, and I don't think it was ever on purpose. It was always part of another thing.
Yeah, I saw Loverboy open for the Kinks once. I can't remember where it was, in Seattle somewhere.
I've been to that theater in Edmonds, or I don't know if it's still there, but I've been there a long time ago.
Yeah, right down there where the circle is, and the theater is just down on the right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happened to me with Santana. I saw Santana more than I ever wanted to see a band, but it seems like the acts that I wanted to see were opening for him.
I don't mind the Kinks; they're fine with me. It's just that I never specifically went to see them. I think the Doobie Brothers, the same thing. I think I've seen the Doobies 4 or 5 times, and it was always because they were part of something else.
Yeah,
the Doobie Brothers,
the Doobies, and the Allmans at the Gorge, all on the same bill. And it was all of the double drummer bands, basically, all at once.
Yeah.
Wow. I've never been to the Gorge yet. That came about after I left. I actually went to school in Ellensburg. I went to Central Washington University. But they didn't have the Gorge yet. The Gorge was where we'd go down and go fishing, quite honestly.
It was really rough in the beginning, no lights, and they'd let you have a bottle of wine or 2, I think, glass. And
right.
I went to the first show, which was Dylan with G.E. Smith in the band and Booker T and the MGs.
Mm-hmm.
And then
cool.
I think, what's her name? Give Me One Reason, come on, what's her name? I don't remember. No. Anyway, it was a disaster because at the end of the show, there's no light in the field. You couldn't find your car. People were walking around for hours trying to find their cars. And all of the women who were wearing like sandals and stuff, their feet were all cut to shreds because there's broken glass bottles everywhere.
Wow.
So they've come a long way since then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like Burning Man. That's it.
It was bad. And people were sliding down the hill, and it's like there weren't really paths. It was really rough.
Yeah, I remember that the first time I really felt the power of music, though, was Kurt, you're in the Pacific Northwest, so you probably heard of her, Marilee Rush and the Turnabouts.
Sure. Yeah, I worked
called
with
the
her.
Angel of the Morning. She was our neighbor 2 doors down, and they used to rehearse. And so we'd go sit outside and listen to this rock band in the 60s. There's rehearse, doon, 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 doon.
She still does a little bit of stuff here and there with Billy Mack. Is another guy from up here.
Yeah, she's still around.
Tracy Chapman. That's who I was trying to think of.
Oh yeah.
Tracy Chapman.
Turns out Jan and I were at a show together and didn't way before we met each other. The very first concert in an arena in the United States was at Madison Square Garden, and it was opening act was Mitch Green. What's his name from Fleetwood Mac? The original Fleetwood Mac.
Peter Green.
Peter Green, and then a brand new Grand Funk Railroad, and then Sly and the Family Stone.
I was at that show.
Oh, you were. I just said we were both at that show. And that was a Sid Bernstein show. And he said he would never work with Sly again because Sly was late.
Oh my God. I had no idea that Sly, because it was one of those things that I don't even remember how I got the tickets or whatever. Somebody took me. I can't remember who took me. And the reality is that I had no idea that Sly Stone was famous for not showing up for his shows. But, that we were at Madison Square Garden.
Well, he did show up. He was just late. That's all.
Yeah. It was a good show, if I remember.
Great show. It was in his prime. It was a great show. Grand Funk Railroad, an American band. I mean, that was, the first time you ever heard these songs because they were brand new. And then,
the interesting thing about that, very interesting thing about that was the very next, almost it seemed like to me, the next time that I heard about Grand Funk, they were headlining Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. Everybody went like, who is this? Put them right up on top. But I remember that walking, I was outside and Fleetwood Mac had already started to play. And so I'm hearing, music in the distance. And then you walk through they call it a vomitorium, right? So you walk through the hallway to get into the arena. And as I'm getting closer, the sound is getting bigger and bigger. And of course, never having heard an arena show before, with all the reflections coming back on the walls, to walk into that arena and to hear that sound system, it was like something I never forgot. It was a moment that said to me, this is unbelievable. What a great way to see a concert. Yeah.
And in those days, it was Voice of the Theater, if I remember correctly.
Oh my God.
I wouldn't even know it. That was not my field back then.
There is a group that somebody invited to me of pictures of concerts from the 60s and 70s.
Oh, that's a great Facebook page.
Yeah, I've been looking at that.
Yeah. I've been posting stuff there from pictures I took.
Yeah, people are posting pictures, and it really is cool to see, going into the Wayback Machine of seeing those kind of shows.
Baskets being flown, PAs that get stacked on the ground and then lifted up in the air with straps over everything.
Yeah, it's crazy what they used to do. Not so safe, Luckily, nobody ever got hurt that I know of. But, I got a question for you guys. And, talking about our first shows, I have been in the industry now a long time. You all, everybody here. Is there any act that you saw when you were a kid and then you ended up getting to work with that meant anything to you?
Oh, man, that was my first concert. That turned into a whole bunch of acts I worked with. I mean, the headliner for that concert was Neil Sedaka. And he had, Happy Birthday, Sweet 16 and all those songs. And he was huge. So he was the headliner. And then I ended up working with Neil. And it's a funny story. In those days, I mean, those concerts were open seating. Like I said, you go for the first show and you're probably stuck in the balcony. Then during the movie, you try to slip down and find a seat in the orchestra. Nobody left. So in those old theaters, when you came from backstage, you were already in like row 13 on the side or row 9, you know. So we could stand there and watch the show. You couldn't stand in the aisles because you were blocking somebody's vision. And contrary to all the movies, they never allowed that. But I could stand off to the side. So I'm watching Neil Sedaka, and this woman comes from backstage, a middle-aged woman with a fur coat on, and she goes, "That's my son, Neil, and he bought me this fur coat." And it was like, whoa, look at that. My brush with the celebrity. So then later on, I went to work for Neil when he had his big comeback in 75 and 76. And, before that, the act just before Neil, who we had to follow, was Bo Diddley. And Bo Diddley tore the place up. I mean, he was, that rhythm was Bo Diddley's sound, right? So when I went to work for Neil, I said, and then he didn't come out for the second show. And we found out that he was doing a duck walk off stage. He fell down and broke his leg. So he didn't do the next show that we did. So when I'm working with Neil, I say, "Neil, I was at the show and you were at, and blah, blah, blah." And Bo Diddley broke his leg. And they went, "Oh, man, we were so glad he broke his leg. We couldn't follow him. He tore up the crowd so much that when Neil came out, it was like, night and day." So I thought that was really cool. And I met his mom and told that whole story. So now later on in the years, I'm sitting in a restaurant and Bo Diddley is sitting next to me about 15 years later. And I say, "Hey, Bo, I was at the show where you broke your leg." And he got like, "What? Oh my God, I forgot all. And then I said, "Yeah, not only that, but I worked for Neil Sedaka, and he told me that he had a hard time following you." Well, he was so grateful to hear that he went out to his car and got a poster from the show he was just coming back to LA from, and he signed it and gave it to me. That was my Bo Diddley. But wait a minute, this show gets even better, because back then I was telling you, it was bands that come, singers that come out and sing, and the backup band, plays them out, da 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 da, and then they play the song, and then they play them off. Da, 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 da. It turned out it was the Bobby Vinton Orchestra before he ever had a hit. He's a musician, a great reed player, and an arranger, and a conductor, and a composer. So he was the young guy who was playing this music. And then I went to work for Bobby Vinton. So we talked about that show at the Brooklyn Paramount. And he was saying, yeah, nobody could follow Bo Diddley. He had an electric bass, and every other act had an upright bass. He played the upright bass. His orchestra played the upright bass for all the other acts, and Bo Diddley bought his own bass player. So, brilliant. He just tore the place up. And then even more than that, I ended up meeting Murray the K, and I ended up with the other DJ who was a co-host. I met them. That first show affected my life for over the next 30, 40 years. I just kept running into people who worked that show. So, yeah.
That's impressive. What about you guys? Have you have any experience like that?
Not quite like that. I mean, I worked with, as far as the people that were inspirational to me, Peter Townsend, which was just basically doing some mic demos. I mean, it was no big deal. And then Chicago and Earth, Wind and Fire did a tour back in the early 2000s together. And I did the wireless mics for Sennheiser, with them. But that's about it,
Kurt, what about you?
I've gotten to work with a lot of people that I, like or liked as a kid, and, mostly with them coming through venues that I was a provider for or on concert bills. Haven't toured with any of them or worked as extensively as David, but yeah, I've got to work with a bunch of people. Most of the time it works out for the best. Sometimes you don't want to meet your heroes.
Yeah. I was very fortunate. I got to work with a lot of the people that I went to see when I was younger, and then getting involved in the business that I ended up getting to be, having some sort of encounter with it. Most of them worked out really, really well, to say the least. But I was thinking about the time of an experience when I went to see the Grateful Dead, and I cannot remember the drummer's name from the Grateful Dead at this point in time. I forgot his name.
Mickey Hart, right?
or Billy Kreutzmann. There's two of them.
Mickey Hart, that's what it was, right? Mickey Hart. So I don't know, I must have been 18 years old at this time, and we got some seats that they were like in the 14th row of the Fillmore to see the Grateful Dead, and we got there early, and this old couple comes up to us to our seats and said to me, "Would you like to trade seats with us?" And I said, "Well, these are really good seats, you know," and I thought their seats were way in the back. And I said, "Well, where are your seats?" She said, "They're in the 5th row." I said, "Well, 5th row, that's much better than the seats we have. Why would you want to trade with us?" And he said, "Well, we're Mickey Hart's parents, and it's too loud for us in the front." And I said, "Too loud? Yeah, we'll trade." And we traded, and I got to see the Grateful Dead 5th row dead center. And that changed my life forever, that particular episode, because I was sitting in the 5th row in a Grateful Dead show at Fillmore East, and I got thirsty, and these guys were drinking apple juice next to me. And I said, "Oh man, can I have some of that apple juice?" And I thought it was non-filtered apple juice, because as I was drinking it, I felt the bits of apple go down my throat, And the guy said, "Hey man, that is really pure LSD you're drinking." So now you know why I am the way I am. But speaking of that aspect of the show, yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, maybe Monday, that the federal government now is allowing people to buy over the counter hearing aids for the first time. That you'll be able to buy hearing aids. And I think that's important for us and for our industry, because, I guess, hearing is important. And for the most part, when we used to go to the shows, we used to think that if we had the sound in our ears after we left the show, it was a great sounding room, not finding out until many years later that was the distortion in our heads from the speaker systems, So you guys have any comments on the over the year hearing aids?
Yeah, it's about time.
Yeah.
It was a monopoly. They were just, $6,000 for something this big. And that's a lot of money.
It's
6,000.
crazy.
Mine were more than that. It's like $12,000, depending on
and now you can
the caliber and level that you get. I mean, they can be very, very expensive. So I'm sure you're not going to buy that type of hearing aid, running into the CVS. It's going to be, something that's a little more broadband, I guess.
Well, you can go to Costco and you can see what they have there. It'll be kind of that.
Yeah, but it's with all the headphones and earbuds that everybody wears with their phones and everything now, we're going to need it.
Yeah.
Well, right now, the Apple has the ability that I don't know if you know this or not, but if you're wearing the Apple AirPods and you put your phone down, or you could hold your phone up, they will act as a hearing aid or a listening device from the other room. That they will allow you to use your phone so that you can put your phone down. And the idea, of course, is that to use it to amplify your hearing, but some people are using it as a spying device as well. So if you're in a meeting and someone leaves their phone behind, don't be careful what you say. Okay, that's all I want to tell you.
Always the case, isn't it?
Yeah. So anybody in the mood? Let me say it another word. With all the weather we were talking about, electric vehicles, and this story. Wow, I got mental block because he's not here right now. God, I can't believe it. I've got mental block. I hate when that happens. Greg Baker. That's it. Greg Baker sent me this story. Electric vehicle fires have burned down homes after Hurricane Ian saltwater damage. And so Florida wants answers. Has anybody heard about that?
No.
That electric vehicle? I mean, I guess batteries in salt water can start fires, right?
Apparently.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Well,
Well, there you go.
Salt water is more conductive than regular water.
Well, usually when you drop something electronic in salt water, it's over. It's
Right.
the end of the story.
Including
No matter
the
how.
car.
But I think the charging systems are what's causing the problem here. isn't it? Is it the charging systems of the Tesla charging systems on the houses? And the combination of salt water?
It says electric vehicle fires have burned down homes after Hurricane Ian.
Oh, okay. So it is
Not
electric
the
vehicle.
charging station. So if you have a car and you're, try not to get it under salt water. That's what I would say. And speaking of cars, if anybody's got some extra spare cash, if you got like 350,000 lying around doing nothing, Spectra, that's the name of the car. It's a luxury EV. It's an all-electric powertrain, 430 kilowatts of power, approximately 577 horsepower, and 900 Nm or 664 feet per pound of torque. And it's the new Rolls Royce, and it is unbelievable. It'll push, this car weighs 6,000 pounds, and it will go from 0 to 60 in 4.4 seconds. That is an impressive Rolls Royce. And we have the link that we could throw in the chat on that one, which is really, really cool, man. It's just really cool. It's beautiful. It's gold. The car is gold. It's, just like, man, if I had that kind of money, I would never buy a Rolls Royce like that. But the kind of guy that's going to buy a Rolls Royce has got a lot more money than that, Speaking of a lot of money, I told you last week that Mackenzie Scott, former Jeff Bezos' wife, is single again and available. And she just donated $80 million to the Girl Scouts of America. So bravo, Mackenzie Scott. That is putting your money where your mouth is. And 80 million to her is like a drop in the bucket. It's like nothing, absolutely nothing. So speaking of absolutely nothing, Netflix is up. Netflix was doing badly, but Netflix, they just had a good quarter, and now they're going to offer a new service for $7.95 a month, where you could get ads. So if you want to save a little bit of money on Netflix and watch movies with ads, then you can get that new service from Netflix, which is available to you. How about this? Speaking of concerts, Journey just celebrated 50 years. And they're doing their 2023 dates. They just announced that. So if you haven't seen Journey, did you hear the story about how they got the new singer?
With Journey?
Yeah.
Oh, YouTube video.
Yeah, years ago.
Yeah. Just
It's kind of old.
He's been with him for a long time now.
yeah.
But it's just like that movie with what's his name? They were a tribute band, and the band called him up and wanted him to work with them. Rockstar, or whatever the name of that movie was.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So here's another thing. The biggest band in the world right now, I guess, is that K-pop BTS. They are now they're disbanding the band for a couple of years while they go into the military. They're all going into the military.
Pulling an Elvis.
Say that again.
Pulling an Elvis. They've got to go do their mandatory service.
Yep, they got to do their mandatory service. That's pretty cool that they're all going to do that.
Let me show you something. This is an article in Variety, and the
Biz and Buzz.
Headline is musicians grapple with glut of post-COVID tours, and economic uncertainty and fierce competition. It's talking about there are so many tours out now that nobody's making money except for the big guys. The little guys are starving because they're just not making money.
Not only that, they're burning out.
Yeah, I don't know how to get it to you, Jim, but it's a double-sided article, and it's really good.
Yeah, there was an article in Polestar about that as well. About basically what's happening is that these bands have been off the road for so long that now that they're on the road and they're doing so many shows that they're burning out as well, and they just can't maintain that kind of level of touring. And I would assume that the only way they're making money these days is by selling merchandise. That would be the only way. And the only way they're going to sell merchandise is by touring. So it's a catch-22. But yeah, how many shows can you possibly go see when the big shows like Harry Styles, for example, is selling out Madison Square Garden 15 nights in a row, and then you have a smaller band playing somewhere? Where is that money going to come from? How many shows can somebody go see? And all the banks seem to be doing really well. All the banks just announced all their earnings, and it seems that they're all making money. And credit card debt, although increasing, they're not having that many defaults. So there must be some money around somewhere. You know? And you know what I'm seeing right now? Maybe, I don't know if you guys are seeing it as well. I'm getting letters, emails from like all my vendors, you know, banks. I'm not talking about my individual vendors of what I do for a living, but I'm talking about my banks, my telephone company, all of the subsidiary things that I use every day, my utilities. They're all offering me that if I refer any of my friends to them, they will pay me money. Like, for example, my credit card company, Revolt, they're going to give me $80 if anybody uses my code to sign up for their credit card. Chase Bank, JP Morgan Chase just sent me an email basically saying like this is, and this is, they're saying that, listen to this. This is, I don't know if you're seeing it. Okay, share now. It's worth $750 towards travel when you redeem through Chase. And it says, share now, give this code out that you can earn up to 50,000 bonus points per year by referring a friend for the Chase Sapphire Reserve card. That's 10,000 bonus points you can share with your each approved friend. So you get 10,000, they get 10,000. So I'm seeing a lot of that. Are you guys seeing that too?
Yeah, a little.
Not quite like that. I mean, I'm getting a lot of, you know, offers, but not, you know, referring, you know, friends and customers over. I guess they don't like the people I hang with.
Yeah. And you know, there's another thing that's happening. Have you guys heard of Swimply? Anybody? Swimply? It's SWIMPLY. Well,
Nope.
basically what they do, it's like a rental roommate kind of thing, except you can put your pool up for rent. So if you have a nice pool, you can put your pool up for the day to rent to strangers to come over to your house and swim in your pool. Anyway, I got a letter from my municipality, Henderson, saying, that's illegal. You cannot rent out your swimming pool for the day to strangers because it doesn't meet our code. So be careful about that.
Yeah, plus, if somebody drowns in your pool, what you know?
Oh,
what
the liability's got to be huge.
Yeah, I bet it is. So I got one more thing I want to talk about, and then we could just talk about whatever we want, and that is Social Security. Social Security is raising their, if you're on Social Security, you're getting a huge increase, 8.7%, I believe. But there are some drawbacks with that, believe it or not. Number one is that your tax bracket could change if you're not making enough money. By them giving you the raise, they're giving it to you with one hand and taking it back with another because they'll be taking more taxes out. And also your Medicare and some of those other benefits that you get as well are going to go up. So be careful about that. There's an article from Yahoo Finance that I thought was really interesting about Social Security benefits, and we'll share that link as well. And so you've got that. Anyway, that's about it. There's other things we could talk about. Anybody have anything else they want to say?
It's a quiet bunch today.
Yeah, you know, it's like everybody's working and every, you know, it's everybody's working, everybody's busy. People don't have time to do the kind of things that when we started this show is what, you know, everybody was sitting around wondering what they were going to be doing. And now we're past that. Things are really, they're not back to normal. It's a different kind of normal. And that's one of the things that everybody I talk to has a story to talk about of how COVID has changed their lives. And I don't know anybody whose COVID has changed their lives more than myself and the way I operate my business. Like, for example, one of the things that I'm in Thailand right now. Who would have thought that I would be in Thailand this long period of time without having to go into the office every day? You know? So that really changed my life, the way I think. And I never even imagined my having employees that didn't have to go, that could work out of their house. Who would have thought about that? It would have been the most foreign concept in the world for me, because I believe that it's really good to have the symmetry of going into the office and having that day-to-day repartee with your employees. But thanks to COVID, I had to pare my staff down. It's just Tina and myself now. And we're using the website more than ever before to automate what we do so that I could do it with less people and be more successful. I learned a very valuable lesson from COVID. It's not how much gross income you generate. It's how much of that gross income you generate that you can keep. And when I had lots of expenses and all that, it was always a struggle. What about you guys? Have you seen any difference in your life? How you handling your life? How has COVID affected you in the things that you're doing different today?
I'm definitely not traveling as much as I used to. I used to be gone every other week. I'd be up in Seattle. I'd be, San Francisco, come back home, blah, blah, blah. I'm working more from home than ever. And I think it's on both parties' side. I don't think people like to see you walk through their doorway anymore, and they're not necessarily all in the doorway. That, just like you're talking, Jan, about people not working in one spot anymore. It's the same thing, now with if you're out going to visit customers, it's kind of hard to do. It's hard to unless they're like working for a broadcaster or something. It's hard to get get in front of people.
Yeah, Kurt, how are you? What are you seeing?
Well, I mean,
How has it affected you personally? How has it affected you personally?
I've never really been able to work from home in the traditional sense. I mean, I go to the warehouse and, do that kind of stuff, and the gigs are gigs. So I guess the only thing I ever did from home was bookkeeping and, booking stuff. And I still do that. It's been strange because I had a lot of relationships with some clients, and those people, some of them just kind of didn't make it through staying in the biz in COVID. They went and did other stuff. So it's been a little bit weird to reconnect with some of the clients, and the people that I used to, work with aren't there anymore. So that's strange. I think the biggest thing I noticed is everything's very last minute. I get calls where people are like, "Hey, what are you doing in 4 days? We got a show." And I'm like, "It's 4 days out, and you're trying to find a PA now." So that's everything seems very last minute to me, and I'm not sure why that is, but that's the most noticeable thing.
Well, I'm not a PA system. I'm just a guy, but they are calling me late and saying, "What are you doing next week?"
Yeah, it's crazy.
A lot.
I
never know what I'm going to be doing. I mean,
Yeah.
I ended up going to Pebble Beach. I got a call 6 days before that. And yet, on the other hand, this Charo show I've had for months. So every once in a while, but generally the corporate stuff is last minute, absolute last minute.
Yeah, I had 2 shows last week that I could have done, except it was such late notice that there was no way I could staff them. And I already had most of my guys out of state doing a corporate event. So I had the gear, it sat in the warehouse, and there was nobody here that could go do the show, because it was just it was like literally 4 days, and they were not little speakers on stands. I mean, it was full trucks and full production and the whole deal. And I'm like, how did you wait until 4 days before to start looking for a PA? I just don't get it.
Yeah. Josh, what about you? How has COVID affected you, and has changed your life? Has it changed your life in any way?
It's keeping me busy and giving me more work. I've been doing a lot of shows lately, and then doing a lot of landscaping on the side. But yeah, it's been busy. I don't know what it is. It's just been a lot of traveling and just a lot of phone calls and other stuff like that. So yeah, it's been busy.
Yeah. What I see, where another thing that it's really affecting me is that you're ordering in advance of things that normally you would just say, "I'll take this," and they ship it the next day. Now you have to plan months and months in advance. I mean, a good example with the Waves thing that with Kurt and I is that it took how many months? 4 or 5 months
6
to
months.
get the Waves package.
6.
And I sold some S6Ls, and we placed the order in April, and it just shipped this month, and it didn't even complete ship. They're missing cards from the front of house rack, so that the console is, even though they've got the Surface now and the rack, they don't have enough cards to do a show. And I know that Digico is, if I wanted a 32-bit rack, which I need, second quarter next year. Yamaha, if you need any racks from Yamaha, second quarter next year. And there's no guarantee that you're going to get it second quarter next year. So like, and they want the money now to hold it. And then, of course, the other thing that I see has changed in COVID is that the pricing, I mean, I've never seen so many price increases in such a short period of time. Whereas, and one company made an announcement that all the orders that are in right now, if you haven't paid for them, we're going to have a price increase and we're going to cancel your purchase order. And so where that affects, if you're doing an install and you've already made the contract with the venue, and then all of a sudden now you get a price increase on the back end before you could deliver it, that's a challenge.
I'm doing an install that's got some of those issues, and I just refuse to provide a done by date because I can't. And I don't control it, and I wouldn't quote any shipping because I can't control what it's going to be or predict it. And I've just been clear that the longer you wait, the longer you're going to wait. If you don't get in the line, then it could be a year before you get those wireless mics.
Yeah. Another thing that I'm experiencing from my end, and from SoundBroker, where it's a change and it's affecting my life, is that a lot of the gear that I'm selling, that I'm finding on the used market to resell, are from people who are going out of business, who they've had enough. They don't want to do it anymore. They just, look, I'm tired of doing this. I'm going to find something else to do. And that's really unique because it ends the repeat business because they're not going to be there anymore, So, I mean, but the marketplace is really, the marketplace, if you're staying in business, the marketplace is booming for that kind of stuff because everybody's looking for gear because you can't find it on the new side. So you have to use some used gear. So, I mean, that's good for me, but it's really sad that people are deciding that they've had enough and they don't want to do this anymore. So it's complicated. It's very complicated. And now we're seeing, of course, this is an election year, and I hope that everybody in this room and anybody who's listening to me is going to vote for whoever it is you're going to vote for. Just get out there and vote. And of course, I hope you're voting for the same things that I am. That's all I could say about that. So if you have any idea of who I am, you know where I am in the voting process. So there you have it. With that in mind, if there's anything else that anybody wants to say, then we'll say it now. Otherwise, we are going to say goodbye to those people on Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn and wherever else they're watching it. And we'll just come back next week for the 127th meeting of the Roundtable. So anybody?
Stay safe.
Yep.
That's it. Stay safe. Well, that's it. You've heard it. You've heard it from an expert. Stay safe. Stay safe. Be healthy. And remember, you make it happen. So make it happen and take care of yourself. Go out and vote. I always like to say, as they say in Chicago, vote early and vote often. But I won't say that anymore. Especially if you're dead, do not vote if you're dead. That's all I can say. But anyway, with that in mind, I want to thank you all for watching and making this show a reality for us. If you have anything you want to share, send me an email to SoundBroker@gmail.com or DM me from any of the sources that you can, and I will get back to you. Just remember, everything you heard today is an opinion, so do your own research. And with that, have a great week, everybody. Make it happen, and we will see you again next week for the 120.